Solana is where the talent is going. It is where the really interesting use cases are. Community was going to be a moat and a value in a way that had never been before. Community is defined not by the number of people, but by the strength of the social bonds between the members. Do people make the time in their calendar to do this? Would you fly away from your home to go meet these internet strangers in person? That's what it's really about. How often are people actually talking to each other without you forcing the conversation? That's the strength of the community.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast, where we're talking to the builders, the entrepreneurs, the people that are building the crypto ecosystem. And there really couldn't be a better summation for our guest today. If we're looking at people that are building stuff and people that are doing amazing things, I'm joined here with Kash from Superteam. Kash, look, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, buddy. It's a real pleasure to be here. We've been putting this off for too long, honestly. I remember when you first started this a few months ago and how hyped I was.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember what episode we're on now, but we are probably mid double digits, I think. We started at Breakpoint in person, and yeah, we've just been powering through all the awesome people. It's high time that we had you on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here with the best content creator in the game.
I don't know about that. Well, we're going to be talking about a lot of really cool stuff today around building and this notion of what that means and around getting it done and how do you actually do that? It's a term that's thrown around a lot in the world and, oh, we're building this, we're building that. Okay, who's building it? How are they building it? What are people doing? So we'll get into that. But firstly, I'm curious about your journey thus far. Have you got into this crypto show? And what's your journey been so far to be at Superteam today?
Yeah, it's been a weird journey, if I'm being honest. So my background is not in tech. I'm not a developer, for anyone who's watching this. My background's not even in business or anything like that. My background, I studied postmodern political philosophy back when I was in college, which was not a very kind of lucrative field to study. So I kind of started.
It's one of those degrees, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey, it's a blast. If you're watching this, I encourage you to go check it out. We need more postmodern political philosophers in the world, but I was not going to be one of them. So I kind of learned pretty early on to start companies up. And then I was starting a few companies. If we fast forward 8 or 9 years, actually less. If we fast forward a few years, I then came across the Ethereum white paper. And in the very first paragraph of the white paper, if I'm not mistaken, DAOs are mentioned. And this idea of these autonomous organizations that have the ability to redistribute power and how people coordinate and blah, 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 all the kind of stuff that got my kind of academic mind buzzing. So that's when I first got into ETH, got some ETH. I tried to participate in the DAO, the original, the DAO, which then subsequently got hacked.
The classic.
Yeah. But, unlike I think some people who saw that as a major failure, me as a neophyte in crypto, thrilled. I had my Ethereum. All of a sudden, I had Ethereum Classic as well. I got free money for no reason.
Wow.
And then I could sell that. Right.
Out of thin air. Amazing.
Out of thin air. Incredible. Magic internet beans, and so that kind of put me down the rabbit hole of trading back on Poloniex and these other really weird exchanges. And again,
Cripsy.
So then
Do you remember Cripsy?
I do remember Cripsy. I didn't use it myself because some of the UX on that stuff was just
it was terrible.
God.
Yeah.
Abysmal, man. You remember Ether Delta and trying to actually snipe things? Oh. Those were the days. But so for many years, that was just kind of the extent of how I was engaged, was intellectually and trading kind of financially. If we again fast forward to 2021, I guess, was when I was talking to a buddy of mine, a guy named Akshay BD, about this new job opportunity I had to be an entrepreneur in residence at this big bank. And he kind of grabbed me by the shoulders and was like, hey, man, we talk about crypto all day. Yeah, he was like, fuck that. Let's go do something fun instead. And so that's when I joined. So at the time, him and Thunmei already had a podcast called Super Pumped. And then I kind of came on board to turn it into a community, which we call it Superteam DAO. And now we just call it Superteam. So yeah, it's been ups and downs and kind of luck at every turn. But that's how I got here today.
Amazing. And maybe a bit of an intro before we get into what you're doing, but what was the idea behind creating Superteam? Was there a gap in the market? Was there something where you're like, man, we're missing this whole thing. What do we need to do? We need to help people build stuff. What was the thesis on creating it in the first place?
I think there were two. So the first thesis was, which is still what I hold to today, is that crypto was at the time, and even now, largely an emerging market story, right? Most of the value, most of the use cases were for economies where there was relatively lesser trust, relatively lesser financial infrastructure, all that kind of good stuff. So that was one key thing, that we wanted to focus on some emerging markets, or ascending markets, as we like to call them. And then the second key part of the thesis...
This is the correct way to characterize them, by the way. It's ascending and descending. So yes,
that's right.
100%.
That's right. That's what if you look at all of our verbiage online, that's like how we always say it. And then oftentimes people are like, what is ascending? So yeah, ascending markets. People in ascending markets know that that's the way to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And then the second part of the thesis was this recognition that community was going to be a moat and a value in a way that it had never been before, because you could financialize communities, but also using crypto economic incentives to kind of coordinate people all around the world to do interesting things. So we really wanted to double down on community as opposed to like tech products. And we really wanted to double down on ascending markets as opposed to, like the US or Singapore, which is where I lived at the time. And so that was kind of the opportunity that we saw. In particular, I think we knew that if we wanted to serve these emerging markets or these ascending market participants, it couldn't be ETH at the time. Like gas was just too expensive. And, the average, I think, Deloitte consultant in India makes like $1,500 or $2,000 a month, which is, not bad, but it's certainly not anything comparable to the West. They're not going to be able to spend, $100, $200 a week on gas, right? Just not possible.
Yeah.
And so then we were looking at alternative ecosystems like alt layer ones or AL2s. And I think Solana really caught our interest for a bunch of reasons we could talk about. But that was the kind of the third pillar of the thesis, is that Solana is where the talent is going. It is where the really interesting use cases are. And so let's do the community thing in an emerging market for Solana specifically.
Excellent. And the community focus, that's also a curious one, because community in my mind, maybe before about a year or two ago, it kind of meant a bunch of people on Twitter that are all kind of shilling the same thing. That's kind of what community meant. And that's what everyone sort of thought it to mean. But I guess you came along and saw that maybe there's a more productive way to channel these bunch of people that are all perhaps doing the same thing. Maybe they're all aligned in some way. Maybe they all care about the same kind of stuff. And I guess if you get a lot of people in a room that are all doing that, like, you can actually channel that into more productive things. What's your take on community, and what does it mean to you, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's like almost exclusively used incorrectly in like my very humble opinion, right? I think that the clear difference is between an audience and a community. And an audience on the one side is a one-to-many relationship, and it's defined by the number of people that are there, versus a community is defined not by the number of people that are there, but by the strength of the social bonds between the members. And even at the time, this is kind of like when DAOs were really starting to pick back up, you'd see all these, Discord communities where they'd be like, we have 30,000 people in our community because 30,000 people had joined their Discord. And in truth, that was like a pure bullshit vanity metric, right? Getting people.
What does it mean?
It means nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like really the only metrics that matter are like how often are people actually talking to each other without you forcing the conversation? And then how many like new friendships are being born? How many new companies are being born? How many experiments are happening that would not have happened otherwise? What kind of relationships can you catalyze? That's the strength of the community, not its size, not its brand, not anything else. So, I'm very proud of the fact that there's a lot of Superteam members who are like now like literally living together. They moved to a new city, many times to Bangalore, and now they live together. Literally tomorrow, we're starting the Hacker Hostel, cross-chain clubhouse thing, where people from all over India, members are coming in to like literally co-live and work together for 2 weeks on different projects. And that kind of thing, that's like a real sign of community. Would you like fly away from your home to go meet these internet strangers in person? That's what it's really about. And I think that's where all of the excess value also is. Audiences will always be valuable, audiences for this podcast or whatever else, but it's communities that are really going to be able to kind of shift the future. And the unique insight that I think we had there is it does not need to be a massively scaled community. So super teams in each country, we're live in 5 of them right now, are capped to 150 members at a time. And that's based on Dunbar's number, which many people will be familiar with, the kind of rough number of people you can hold in your head at any given time. And so by focusing and optimizing for depth rather than breadth, I think we were able to find like communities where people knew each other, got along well, and were able to kind of build cool things together.
And why are people flying to the other side of the country to go and live in a hacker house, hostel kind of thing? What are they trying to do? What's their thinking behind it, right? Because I guess many people that are perhaps talented in building things in Web3, they could be in a lot of different areas making money in different ways. But what's something that I guess prompts someone to want to do that? Is it new? Is it exciting? Is it a new opportunity which they don't currently have? Like, why would you get on a plane and go somewhere to do that?
So I think the two things that we focused on are like, one is culture, because most everything is downstream of culture. And the second is opportunity, right, to your point. So going over there, we have some fun like media events and things going on. But really the idea is that we've built up enough culture in Discord in our various events over time where there's a sense of identity to being a super team member. And so you just want to share that with other people, right? And kind of like continue to build more inside jokes or meet the guy that, is always joking around on the community call or whatever. So there's that kind of social aspect of it. And indeed, the second is around opportunity, I think. So we're clear primarily focused on getting more grants out into the world. We do a lot of bounty work, as you know, and we're trying to create kind of the opportunities for these. I should say, we're creating opportunities for opportunities to be created, right? So like a founder comes, flown in from another part of the country, and now all of a sudden you're like a part-time contributor over there. Those are the kinds of economic opportunities that I think will present themselves over there. But I mean, I think a large part of it is, there's a great Carl Jung quote, right? Where he says that like loneliness is not being alone. Loneliness is not having people that you can speak with about things that really matter to you. And I think that's what these kind of like IRL events really provide, is that these people, they have friends, they know whoever else in their own cities, but they can't like geek out about the future of decentralization or, scalable blockchain products, right? Because they might only have like a local ETH ecosystem or whatever. And that's like the real appeal of a lot of these IRL events, I think.
It is, and perhaps the internet's made that a lot easier, certainly in the last 10 years, I think, for people with perhaps niche interests in different areas to get together and be able to actually talk about these things. Like I know with many other sort of podcast callers, we've been talking about like, what's the future of civilization and should we be building cities in the ocean and stuff like that? Like that's really cool stuff. I love talking about that kind of stuff, but it's not that I can walk down the street and have that conversation with, anyone, right? So I think the ability for people to come together to, talk about a common goal, shared interests that perhaps would not be prevalent if we're all living in different geographies thousands of kilometers away from each other. I think that's really cool. But one thing I think that Solana's certainly been focusing on a lot this year has been developer growth, right? And you mentioned as well with the bounties, and a lot of the bounties, like certainly probably the majority, I would say, would be developer focused. But Solana's been focusing a lot of developer stuff, but you need more than just developers to build companies, right? And I noticed on the front page of superteam.fun, there's literally a mission statement, and you're talking about helping people grow companies. So what's the balance there? Do you guys sort of focus on building developers, and perhaps if you have more developers, then that creates more founders of companies? That because you need a company for people to, have some bread to keep the lights on to build stuff, right?
That's right.
You can't just be living off grants forever. Or is it that you focus on trying to build a company, but then that means a different skill set, perhaps maybe things which are a bit more difficult to quantify via a bounty, whereas a dev bounty, it's like, hey, I either built the thing or I didn't. What's your take on that? Is there a balance there to make? Like, how do we build more companies in this space? How do we get more successful people with jobs in Web3?
Yeah, I would say it's 100% essential. From day one, Superteam was built to be a multidisciplinary community. So we have, of course, we have devs and designers, but we also have like lawyers. There's like video graphics people in there. There's, all sorts of other like random kind of mishmash of skills that are present. Because indeed, it was our belief as well that as great as devs are, alone they cannot kind of build really anything. And so you see a lot of these projects that come out of Superteam oftentimes have like a technical lead or maybe a secondary technical lead, but then they'll find their community manager from within Superteam, or they'll find their marketer or their UX designer. And this is just happening time and time again. And it's a big part of the people that we try to curate in the community to make sure that they're able to kind of like add value together. I would say that our primary goal at Superteam, I think, is to create sovereign individuals in one way or another, right? Which might mean, and oftentimes for many people, is like if you can start your own company that you own a big chunk of equity in, that is going to be the best route, or maybe not the best route, but that is like a route to self-sovereignty and having enough financial comfort and kind of flexibility in your own life to be able to do what you like. But for many other people, especially for some of the younger people that we work with, it's just about getting a job, right? Or it's just about building up your proof of work. A lot of people that come to Superteam and work on the bounties or get small grants, we almost see that like an angel investment in them as like talent, right? Of like, hey, build up your resume a little bit by doing some smaller things. That'll lead to the next thing. And then once you have your company, or once you've got a job, the ask is, hey, give back to the rest of the community. And so we see this time and time again. Shek, who I think you know as well, founder of Gums, great protocol, formerly WordCell. I believe his entire team is hired from other Superteam members, right? He came in, he was just a normal Web2 dev, got a few grants. We all kind of workshopped some ideas together. He obviously is gigabrained and did 99% of the work. But I like to think the community helped out for that additional 1%. And then he came back once he was funded, took some other people with him. He still comes back, does like office hours, gives technical advice, all this kind of stuff. So in that kind of creating sovereign individuals, I think we get some sovereign companies as well. And then we get some people that are just looking for other more kind of tactical things in their lives.
Amazing. And probably, this is something I've been thinking about actually for the last few weeks and months, has been that the internet's actually the biggest country out there. And all of these people are using this thing, they're interacting, they're building relationships, they're deriving an income from this magical internet beans. And you don't need to really sort of care that much about the vagaries of your local geography if you can provide for yourself in a fully online environment and, be able to be that sovereign individual that you were talking about. So I guess it probably starts with people working for this internet nation. But then you mentioned that the different focuses, the 5 different countries that you have and wanting to go into more depth. What does more depth look like? Is there something that is missing from this internet country? Are there certain things that you can't do if we're all standing in front of a computer screen and a webcam? Like, why do we need this focus on a per country basis, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think this may be controversial. I think I think we've been proven right to some degree, so I can no longer be canceled. But had I said this 2 years ago, I think we maybe would have been. One of the things that we found is that really tight-knit communities oftentimes have a common cultural core. Now, that does not necessarily need to be ethnic or national, right? But there needs to be some kind of unifying culture that people have kind of on the way in. And for us, we saw that was regionally based, right? Because language is a giant barrier, right? If all of your references are Bollywood movies and you listen to Hindi music and all the jokes you make are using Hindi, you're not going to fit in a community that's entirely based out of Chicago or something like that, right? You kind of need a place that feels like home. And for us, focusing on the national level was pretty much the easiest way to do that, to ensure that each one would have a kind of cultural core. I think, to a large degree, we've been proven correct on this this kind of thesis, right? Or this hypothesis, I guess. A lot of the more international communities, when the bull market faded away, those people kind of faded away as well. But because we focus not on the speculation, but on the earning opportunities and the actual culture of meeting fun and interesting people, we're here in the bear. And, I don't know if we're necessarily any weaker off as a result. And in many ways, we're growing faster than we used to. So yeah, I think that there is some degree of a cultural core that ends up being really, really helpful for our super teams, at least.
Absolutely. And so how do you go about structuring bounties or growing in these different markets as well? So we realize that definitely cultural core matters, being able to associate with people and do the same thing and have all interests aligned. Maybe that's going to a hacker house or going to somewhere and doing that kind of stuff. But is it you just sort of look at a market and go, hey, we think there should be more grants for this geography and we're going to do that. But I guess what happens maybe before that, or where's the money coming from to be able to do that? Are there any sort of things when we're going, hey, we actually need to grow more companies in this particular space, so we're going to focus on projects which are doing NFT things or, I don't know, data or something like that? Like, what's the thesis that goes into offering grants and growing in some of these new markets as well? Like, is there a priority list there that you guys have?
Yeah, I think at a local level, so right now we're live in 5 countries. That's India, Mexico, Vietnam, Turkey, and Germany are the 5, right? Some of which are ascending nations, some of which are not at this point for reasons we could talk about. But as we think about these local markets, we first just finalize on, is there a local lead who we can really trust, who we think is going to be an excellent community founder? Because I think being a really solid community founder is as hard, if not harder, than being a company founder, simply because there are fewer playbooks for it, right? It's a newer concept. People don't really know. It's not been battle tested.
That you can't hire them. Like, they don't exist. Like,
exactly.
we're trying to look for people at the moment. It's like, what do you advertise? Like, where, how? Like, these people kind of have to self-identify, right?
That's right. I mean, there's plenty of community managers, right, who can add a Discord bot. But that's not really where the value is. In the same way that social media managers are not really where the value is in social media. Tweeting an aspirational quote every Friday is not social media, right? What I mean? Same thing, just managing Discord is not community management. You need community founders who can not only be the pillar and have a small cult of personality around which the rest of the community can initially form, right? I like to think about it like the seed of the pearl. The value of the pearl is all in the layers around the initial seed. But without the initial seed, those other layers don't come, right? So finding that kind of community level founder is not easy. And that kind of dictates where we go, first and foremost. There's a bunch of markets I would love to have a super team in, but we just haven't found the right community founder yet. From there, we really focus on 3 things, which is content, connection, and capital. So content is really important for building top of funnel. And oftentimes that means just general crypto content. It might be remote work kind of content, like future of work type things. Connection is all the community stuff. So a lot of IRL events, a lot of virtual events, a lot of things happening in Discord for us oftentimes. And then capital is where the bounties and the grants come in. Really the approach, though, the simplest way I could put it is we land up in a country and we put out talent magnets. And those talent magnets might be bounties. They might be grants, they might be other things entirely, but typically there's some kind of earning opportunity that people who are very high on aptitude and very low on entitlement will be attracted to. Because the other like really annoying thing about community building is a few bad eggs can kind of ruin a community, right? Imagine you have a party with 150 people and 10 of them are stinking drunk and vomiting on the side, everyone's going to leave. You know what I mean? Like maybe you can handle one or two, but you got to be very careful. And so for us, the talent magnets have to be effective filters for the people that are low on entitlement and will not come into the community and just demand to be fed all the time, right? And so that's usually the launch strategy. So typically there's a few bounties that start off. There's a few grants that we work with. On a financial side, we work with a number of partners, including the Solana Foundation for a lot of things, but other partners like Wormhole and a bunch. I think we run like 9 grant programs at this point. And so that's where a lot of the initial energy starts to come from. And then over time, that starts to become more builder focused. So I think we start with contributors and then focus more on builders and founders kind of as we progress and mature.
Amazing. And what are some of the metrics for some of these markets as well? So 5 different markets, probably all quite different in terms of number of people that are involved. Maybe there's a different split of this many is devs, this many is something else. Some are probably newer. I think Mexico is newer, right?
Yeah, I think they started just a few months ago, 2-3 months ago.
There you go. Yeah. So what are some of the things what does success look like when you launch a market? Is there a point where you're like, hey man, we don't have to do that much anymore. Like it's kind of running itself. We have the right person, we have the talent magnets, we have the community manager, we have the right people in place and it kind of off it goes. Like what are some of the things which you guys look at to launch a new market? I'm curious because we're also sort of thinking about the same kind of things at Step.
Yeah, I mean, and Step DAO doing some very fun and interesting things in terms of bringing people on board. I think for us, the North Star metric that we use both globally and in any individual market is called community GDP, which is a rough way of identifying how much in earnings potential has been created by community members for community members, right? So I think globally right now we're at about 1.75 million, something like that, in terms of total amount of earning opportunities created by members for other members. So that's the first thing that we look at, because we know that if members are hiring each other, are doing bounties with each other, are working on grants together, some good stuff is going to come of that, right? That's just been our experience so far. So that's a big one. The other one that we really try to look at is like how actively engaged is the community. This is oftentimes softer, but like an easy metric is how many people, what percentage of people are coming to the community calls that we do every week for those local markets. There are DAOs out there that I will not mention that have, thousands of members, and then they have a community call and, 19 people show up. And it's like, well, obviously, that's, those aren't real members then. So that's another thing that I think we're really keen on is like, do people make the time in their calendar to kind of come and do this? And then I think the last metric that we really look at is around the global hackathons that happen on Solana. Obviously flagship events, but are there a lot of registrations in that company? Is that company doing enough content to build awareness? And then how are the submissions coming along? Are they kind of mentoring teams and actively engaging them in the community? And then finally, do you have any winners? Because obviously that's what we really want is people building high value companies and high value projects. So that's like the general structure of the funnel, I would say. It's kind of like learn, earn, and build is the way that we think about it.
Amazing. And how has the hackathon, the global hackathon, so recently we had the Grizzlython, right? And I remember at Crossroads at our conference, we were working with Superteam Turkey and talking with local teams there that had submitted through Superteam and that community to participate in the Grizzlython. And I guess, do you have any thoughts there? Like, is that a good thing to be doing? Are you seeing a good feedback there? Are there lots of teams applying? Or are teams sort of mainly focusing on the grants in the DAO? Yeah, what's sort of as well maybe the next step? Like after you maybe do a few grants or you apply for a Grizzlython, what do you do next? Where do you go?
As an individual or for us as like a super team?
Well, I guess for individuals that are there, but also from Superteam. But what are you guys seeing? Like, are people going through the stages of joining the Superteam community, applying for the Grizzlython? They do a thing. Are they still part of the community? That they go off and do their own thing? Is that a success? Like, is that an interesting metric to be looking at? I'm curious because these hackathons, I really think they do a great job of bringing a ton of people into the space which perhaps wouldn't otherwise, and getting people to build and think about building projects as well. Because I guess to build a project, you have to think about what's actually needed, right? So you have to sort of have some sort of idea and some sort of concept there. So I'm curious about how successful are they? And if you're helping be that pipeline for a lot of these hackathons, Like, are you guys seeing success through these hackathons as well?
Yeah, so I would say the general success of the hackathons depends on what metric you kind of assign to it. I do think that by most metrics, they're probably pretty successful. I'm sure that there are a bunch by which they're not. I think that it's something like $500 million has been raised across like all the hackathon winners. I don't know how real that number is or what that really means, but they're very large amounts of capital.
Big number, yeah.
It's a big number, right? And if it was half as big, it would still be big. But from our perspective, I would say that the hackathons are really effective as kind of like the tip of the spear for our engagement efforts, right? So they are almost like it's a cyclical, seasonal thing that allows, that gives us an excuse to go out to people and be like, hey, now is the time to test this out. You've maybe heard about it, you've thought about it, but this is a way to like really collect energy and attention. I would say that like, if you imagine the hackathon is like I don't know, let's say like a water jug or something, right? And all the attention and energy is all the water that comes in, and then you pour it out. I see Superteam as kind of like the net that's trying to catch some of it. You're not going to be able to catch all of it. We certainly don't. But if we can identify that top, let's say 10 to 20% of engaged people and bring them into the community, that's a real success. And oftentimes, because of all the work we do around hackathons, for example, we have Superteam Build, which is like an idea repository for people who want to build but don't know what is valuable. It's a way for us to kind of like attract and get a lot of people in and then give them the mentoring, the pitch deck feedback, the technical assistance, the IRL spaces. Like we had this big build station in Germany, which was like a co-working space for like 30 days. And just for the course of the hackathon, all of those types of things allow us to benefit, I think, disproportionately from the hackathon. And I would say that Superteam nations disproportionately contribute to the hackathon as well. If you look at the top
like
six
hundreds
countries,
of submissions, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the top 6 countries, 5 of them have a super team. India was number 1 globally. India is where we started Superteam, so it's the most mature of the markets. I know Turkey was very high up on the submissions as well, thanks to Superteam Turkey, but also obviously the work you guys are doing. And then, yeah, they're just like massive. And then if I'm not mistaken, we had, I think like 10 winners. 10 of the 30 prize winners were Superteam projects, by which I mean like we gave them pitch deck advice. We like helped some of them. Their teams formed at our events, like Splitwave and some of these others. So yeah, I would say we get a lot out of it, and hopefully we contribute some stuff back to it. I think there are downsides. Like right now, the biggest opportunity is to fix the leakage problem. Like there's a lot of interest that just kind of dissipates, especially for projects that don't win any prizes or get the honorable mention. So I think we need to be doing a lot more on developer retention, and I think that's a focus for a lot of people in the ecosystem now.
What's your take on that? How do we do that?
I mean, I think personally, it's like you ask a barber if you need a haircut, you need more super teams. Give me 180 super teams and I'll give you max retention all around the world, But yeah, I think broadly it's around figuring out what people want and then matching them to it. I think oftentimes there's an overemphasis on supporting founders and a relatively lesser emphasis on supporting contributors, right? What we've seen at Superteam is there's a small percentage of people that have the ability to actually found a company, and there's an even smaller percentage that want to, right? A lot of people that can would prefer not to. They have lives, they have other things going on, right? So I think it's about building out the contribution pathways. So I would love to see more structured internships. And like, hey, if you get funded by any of these VCs or by Solana Ventures or whatever, you're on the hook for 2 internships to 2 developers so you can start to give back and upskill them, right? I would love to see more smaller scale competitions, right, which maybe are more geographically located. We do a lot of like hackathons, for example, in Vietnam, and in Mexico has one coming up this weekend. So I think like smaller scale events for localized community where people have a better chance of winning is important. And then of course, just like communicating and putting these people together. So finding ways to connect the kind of promising dev who maybe didn't do well in the hackathon that we want to keep in the ecosystem. Maybe part of the reason he lost is his landing page looks like shit and he doesn't know how to write docs and he's never created a Twitter in his life, right? And so it's about connecting them to the other kind of like neophytes there who would be interested and able to come together and maybe build something a little bit better, even if it doesn't turn into a venture backable company. There are still ways to build, let's say, developer tools or open source infrastructure or whatever else that I think can be really helpful. So a bunch of pipelines. And then last one, I know I'm monologuing a little bit, but I have a lot of thoughts on this. The last one, I think what we're really missing right now in the ecosystem is the intermediate education. There are tons of projects doing really good work at kind of 101 developer onboarding. We're working with the Nas Academy folks and Nasir from Nas Daily on this. And I think 2,500 people have gone through that. It's great. They learn how to make their first contract. The problem with a lot of these hackathons projects is what they submit is pretty new because they're fresh and green. And then they don't really know how to take it further. Like, how do you kind of like level up? So I would love to see specialty education programs, more DeFi fellowships. We just did one with Hero, but I'd love to see a lot more of those, more NFT fellowships, more DAO tooling fellowships, more like gaming fellowships and whatever else it might be, to kind of find that talent and put them through their paces and allow them to upskill.
So does that mean people giving courses, guides, online content, videos, in-person things, mentoring? Like, what does that intermediate level look like from a practical, and like who would be able to do that? I recently spoke with Stardust from the Star Atlas community, and he's built for, I think, a year or two now, various dashboards and stuff for on-chain information about the Star Atlas community. Really cool. Just went and did it and has been doing it for a long time. We spoke about launching an academy for people to learn about getting on-chain data and doing this kind of stuff. Are these the kind of people that need to be involved? Is perhaps people that maybe have some experience, have done some stuff, and are educators? But often the problem there is that these people, maybe they're running their own thing already. Like they're not sort of already just sort of, oh, all right, well, I've done a contract or two, so I'm going to start doing guides for it. Like what does it look like to be sort of servicing this intermediate level of knowledge? What do we need?
Yeah, I think we need more people. I think grants are the short-term answer to this, right? If you find people who maybe, let me think of an example. There's a project called Bunker, which did very well at the last hackathon. Maybe you saw. I think they came in like second or third place on the infrastructure track. Last time I spoke to those guys, they're Superteam Germany members. I don't think they're going to take it forward, right? They think it's great. They want to open source it and kind of like let it be, maybe get a grant to just finish it up. Those are perfect people to now teach a course or lead a cohort around this idea of like data security or developer tools or whatever, right? My background's also in human-centered design. That's what I was doing before I came into crypto, or design thinking, as a lot of people know about it. So I think what you really need is people like the Bunker Boys, or whoever else who has kind of intermediate level experience, co-creating and co-designing these courses with the actual beginners who have just finished from the first place. I think where a lot of these courses go wrong is that they're designed from some ivory tower or just like at home without really like butting up against the real world problems that people have. So it's identifying where's the interest, having those people say, these are the questions and problems that we have, allowing them to kind of co-create their educational curriculum, and then run it once as kind of a co-created cohort, and then you can run it again and deploy it multiple times. So that requires some more intermediate minds, that requires some grant money so that people have a financial incentive to put the time aside. And then, quite frankly, it just requires like some kind of CRM for the ecosystem so that we can know who is interested in what. Because again, I think there's a lot of leakage at every step of the funnel right now.
Yeah, and like activating those people in the community to want to stay there and want to also identify the problem, right? It's like, hey, maybe there's been 800 submissions for the Grizzlython, right? And probably many of those projects, they might not be continuing. So we want those people to know that, hey, actually, some of the knowledge that you learned, you can help apply it and maybe also get some money for that as well to keep the lights on. That's really cool. So how can people participate and be involved in Superteam? It's time to talk about the different avenues, I guess, that you guys have. We've spoken about all these different areas, whether it's designers or devs or content creators. What are you looking for at the moment? Is it Superteam, the organization as a whole? Like you kind of leave it up to the individual countries to sort of source what they're looking for? Or what do you need at the moment and how can people get involved?
Yeah, so we do indeed leave it up to them. The way I sometimes talk about Superteam is almost like Cosmos or something like that, where there's this kind of like layer zero, which is like the global Superteam thing, where we have these dashboards and playbooks and background op systems and just strategic thoughts about how to run it. And then the local countries are like the individual chains, right, which are responsible for their own talent search, their own earning opportunities, and so forth. So the type of talent that's needed in different countries varies, right? So I would say, for example, like Vietnam is very developer heavy right now, and we could probably use more of the designers, marketer, lawyer type folks in it. Someplace like India, we have a pretty nice balance. Actually, I would say the community is probably 60% devs, 40% non-devs. And so it'll kind of vary. I would say that if you are in Mexico, Turkey, Germany, or Vietnam, or India as well, just like reach out to your local Superteam, DM them on Twitter, join the Discord, and then add your proof of work in Discord as well. Say, this is the thing that I've made or built or written or designed that I think should merit me entry into Superteam. For anyone who does not know, you cannot buy your way into Superteam. There is no token. It's entirely merit-based, and it is indeed permissioned in this way, where only kind of top talent comes in. So yeah, we're looking for more of everything, I would say. The biggest thing that we're missing right now, I think, counterintuitively, is actually front-end developers. There's a lot of people who are learning kind of blockchain dev and doing fun things there, and there's not enough like really quality front-end devs. So like if you're like a front-end dev who can also do some UX UI design, like you can basically write your own check in crypto right now, because almost everyone I know is looking for them. But there's also, 1,000 other things they need, right? People need security researchers. They need people who can just write technical documentation is a major problem for a lot of projects. And then go to market is the last thing, is that we're seeing a lot of requests for like local country leads. And so we would love love to onboard them through Superteam, get them into the Solana ecosystem pretty deeply, and then help them get jobs or internships or whatever else it might be at ecosystem projects.
Definitely. And all of that takes place, I guess the central portal to go to superteam.fun, right, is the global, and then definitely go to the individual countries and check out and join the Discord proof of work. I love that idea of the people in the Discord, are productive, awesome people because they've had to do something to be there. They're not just a bot which turned up to try and get an airdrop or a whitelist or something like that. It's like, no, these people are all gigachads and they're all awesome and they're all producing real things, which is amazing to see. So definitely go and check it out. Anything else before we wrap it up, Kash, that you'd like to tell the world?
So I'd say 3 things. I got 3 things to shill. First one is earn.superteam.fun, which is our earning portal. We aggregate all bounties and grants and jobs from across the ecosystem in one easy place for you for free. How nice is that? We have all the Step DAO bounties on there, along with a bunch of other bounties, including some of our own. So if you like money, and I think most people do, I have a feeling you'll love earn.superteam.fun. That's my pitch there. The second thing is Superteam Build. That's build.superteam.fun. You're probably sensing a theme here. That's got a bunch of ideas. We could use even more. I think we have about 100 ideas on there right now, but we can always use more. So if you're watching this and you're a project founder and you want people to build on top of your protocol, for example, reach out, send us the ideas. We'll put them on there with attribution. You'll get more builders coming to you, which is great. And then the third thing I would say is follow us on Twitter. We are trying some more content stuff. So we're making like short form videos. And the flagship kind of event right now is the ecosystem call. I don't know exactly when this comes out, but it's the first Thursday of every month where we get a bunch of OGs in the ecosystem together, including one Mr. George right here, to talk about what's going on around the ecosystem. So it's the fastest and most fun way to stay up to date with what's happening on Solana outside of this podcast, of course. So come on over to that. Yeah, that was maybe 4 shills, but yeah, that's fine.
I love it. Yeah, definitely the ecosystem calls are great fun. I'll be on one very soon. We'll be talking about data and all some of the cool things that we're noticing at Step Data Insights. But look, Kash, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Superteam is one of the real amazing projects in the Solana ecosystem, and we work closely with them all the time, particularly Superteam Turkey. Love what you guys are doing. Go check them out. And we'll put all the links below. It's great fun. But look, thank you so much for being on the call today. And go and check them out.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, George, for having me.
Cheers.